I think the main thing is focus on what makes you an interesting person. I think that's the number one thing, right? Don't go and pursue hundreds of vendor certifications, right? Go and learn something outside your field just because you enjoy doing it.
Alright, good afternoon. My name is Brendan and I'm from GTI Media. Thank you very much for taking time out of your schedule today to join us for this employer showcase. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself and your role in this organization?
I'm Lawrence. I've been working for slightly over a decade right now. I run the SRE team within TikTok Singapore.
But let's jump straight into the first question, right? What are the top 3 things to look out for when hiring graduates?
So when I hire from the schools these days, right, I look at 3 main soft skills, right, so to speak. So I think the first one is really someone who's able to articulate their thoughts clearly, which kind of aligns with our corporate value of being candid and clear. And then the second thing is being able to reason through fundamental facts. And I think this comes into the idea that, we want our staff to be able to come up with solutions that are grounded in truths as opposed to just solving problems at a superficial level. And the last one is being someone who can work well in teams instead of being a lone wolf. I think there are times where, being a lone wolf is important. You need someone who can actually just charge forward and solve problems. But in order to go far and to do this for an extended period of time, you actually need to work well in teams so that, it's more sustainable and, you can actually solve problems longer term.
What advice will you give fresh graduates interested in this line of work or in this company?
So I think the number one thing is to really start learning how to question everything. Sometimes the things you learn in school may not always apply to what's out there in the real world, right? So question everything, learn the fundamentals of what you actually learn in school. Don't just learn the superficial level. In the past decade in tech as well, we have seen a lot of hype-driven cycles. We have seen the hiring market focus on one trend to another trend every other year. And I think one thing that has struck me is that, the fundamentals, principles have been constant throughout all these hiring cycles, right? So when people actually learn the fundamental stuff well, they can then extrapolate and evolve with the ever-evolving kind of work environment that we have.
Okay, and you said something quite interesting just now, which was students learn skills and they apply it. Well, sometimes the application process is very different. Things change when you go out there and they have to adapt to the situation. So what advice would you give to these students to kind of help them ease them into the process of applying these skills?
So I think the number one thing is really, just be open to learning new things, right? Don't just be, okay, I've learned this is what I must apply when I'm at the workforce, right? I think, as I mentioned earlier, right, being able to reason through fundamental facts, go back to the base level of what is the problem you're trying to solve, and then figure out what solves that problem, as opposed to thinking, oh, I learned this set of a framework in school. I'm going to apply this framework to every problem I see from now on.
Right. How do you think a graduate interviewer should do if they want to stand out during the hiring process? And that's quite key because these days, the hiring process can be quite challenging. So what advice will you give to these students?
So I think one of the things is that, a lot of graduates come out and, I see the CV, everyone has them volunteering hours, and then, they've done a whole bunch of projects at home or, with the school projects and other stuff. So I think the main thing is focus on what makes you an interesting person. I think that's the number one thing, right? Don't go and pursue hundreds of vendor certifications, right? Go and learn something outside your field just because you enjoy doing it.
Moving on, how would you describe your company's work culture? And how do you think it stands out from the rest?
So I think one thing that TikTok is famous for, and I think one thing that is quite unique here, is that we prioritize a lot on high-performing teams, and we also focus a lot on personal growth, and at the same time, we want to deliver results. We encourage our team members to actually maintain an entrepreneurial mindset, and we also encourage our people to constantly be pioneering and innovating instead of just saying, oh, I did this in the past and rest on your laurels, right? So we encourage people to keep growing as individuals.
So for the next question, how do you encourage professional development and career growth among employees?
So I think one thing is to really understand the field that they are in deeply, whichever field that might be, attain mastery in that, and then move on to the next skill. I think too often a lot of the younger generation, we see them, they want to learn a new piece of skill, and then they learn the superficial aspect of it, and then move on to something new, right? Without having mastering it. I think the problem with doing that is because you haven't mastered anything at this point in time, you end up not finding that fundamental layer that you can move around.
Right. Like you haven't mastered it enough to understand how it transfers from one place to another.
So you don't actually learn the transferable skill.
Just moving on to the next question, what do you find the most interesting or satisfying about your job?
I think one of the most satisfying things about my job is that this company actually empowers and enables me to seek out problems and solve them, right? And I think that the main thing is that I must have actually thought out about these problems and how to solve them, and actually being able to articulate and sell what I'm doing to my peers as well.
Okay, so now we're moving on to the notable achievements. Are there any achievements that you would like to speak about in particular, like the annual program or some of the skill sets trainings that you guys have?
So our early careers team actually runs a lot of programs to help our campus hire to actually learn about the different parts of TikTok as a business. I mean, you probably know TikTok as a business is huge, right? We have an e-commerce, we have payments, we have the short video streaming, we have live streams as well. So each of these business verticals are actually very diverse. They have very different approaches to solving problems. And our early career actually helped to try to connect the dots between different functions as well as different business lines.
And I think the question I have is that because it's such a comprehensive business and there's so many avenues there, if I'm a student, I might feel a little bit overwhelmed. Where do I start and how do I get started is perhaps the first question that I have.
So I think the first thing, when you join a company that's as big as TikTok, right? Start by understanding what you're supposed to do first, right? Understand the business that you're in, understand how to be successful within the business that you're in. And then after that, you start branching out by, maybe meeting folks within the same function, but different business lines to kind of get their perspectives of how they might do things a bit differently. And then see if you can leverage on that in your own business as well, right? And then after that, you might even talk to other functions within your business to kind of see if they have other perspectives of how you might be doing things currently.
Thank you very much, Lawrence, and I appreciate you coming down to answer these questions for Employer Showcase.
Thank you.